Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Texas Tribune Festival. I'm Emily Ramshaw. I'm the co-founder and CEO of the 19th, formerly the editor-in-chief of the Tribune. It is so good to be back, and I am thrilled that I get to be in conversation with Jennifer Palmieri, who is also no stranger to the Texas Tribune Festival. Hi, Jen. How are you?
I'm super happy to be with you. Just wish I was with you.
Us too. Well, let me tell you all a little bit
Mm.
about Jen if you don't know her already, and you should. Jen is the former communications director for Barack Obama from 2011 to 2015, was in the White House there, was director of communications for Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential bid, and she was national press secretary for John Edwards' 2004 presidential campaign. She is the author of She Proclaims Our Declaration of Independence from a Man's World, a theme I totally agree with, which was published in 2020. Welcome, Jen, and yes, thrilled to get to be in conversation with you today. So welcome back.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really
So
happy to be
you
talking with you.
Amazing. Well, you have been really busy these last 4 years in the aftermath of the 2016 election. First, you wrote Dear Madam President, a book about breaking out from a world built for men. Now in She Proclaims, which came out this summer, this is basically the antidote I needed. This is the sort of a force field I needed behind me as we think about what this future looks like. Talk a little bit about what spurred you in the disappointing aftermath of the last election to go from political advisor to author.
I think that, like a lot of women after 16, I mean, I was obviously just right there in it, but I think a lot of, millions of women in America sort of seem to have the same awakening that for the outcome to happen as it did, not necessarily just that Hillary Clinton lost, but that she lost to him. It seemed to validate doubts that we had in our minds that like maybe we were being asked to play by the wrong set of rules. That I was really worried after 16 that women would feel disempowered and that they would feel sort of chastened by the result, and it had quite the opposite effect, right? It's sort of like it confirmed for us a doubt that we had in our gut that like we deserved more, we were playing by the wrong set of rules, and we're going to do things differently. And I thought I had sort of a unique perspective coming out of Hillary's race. I didn't go into her race thinking that it was going to be that hard or that big of a deal to elect the first woman president. I just thought she was the best person for the job. And then I talk about force fields. I hit this like crazy force field once I started working for her, unlike anything else I had experienced in politics, where people doubt her motivations or suspicious of her. And I just realized how hard it is for a woman to get that top job when you don't have a role model of what that looks like. And that just opened up this whole other way of looking at the universe that I sort of outline in Dear Madam President. And then with this next book, it's like, okay, well, what do we do about it? Like, what are the specific things women can change in their own heads and their own lives that could help them break through in a new way?
Absolutely. Well, I want to get into a lot of those specifics, but I do want to ask, it seems like this book probably went to print well before the COVID era.
Yeah.
There's a lot of optimism. For me, there was a lot of optimism in this read. And I do wonder if looking at the setbacks that women in particular have experienced in this environment where so many women who fought so hard for their careers are suddenly, running childcare and virtual school. Do you feel like this environment we're living in right now, I mean, how big of a setback is it? How much are we going to have to sort of claw our way back in the aftermath of this environment?
Well, I think that we have to reinvent the different systems, right? I mean, I like what the pandemic exposes is, like which the premise of the book is, which is that we are still operating under power systems that were built by men for men, are outdated, and don't serve women. And at the sort of the root of that, that might sound in 2020 America to be like a dated point of view. It's just it's just true. We value men. We value the efforts of men more than we value the efforts of women, and we show that in so many ways, from the voices that get played on the radio to the sports that we watch to the fact that, as revealed in the pandemic, women had the most layoffs, We're also the most essential workers in the lowest paid professions, like home health care worker, like a healthcare worker, like a teacher, like a daycare center person. And they also were bearing more of the burden at home, right? What does that reveal? That reveals that we are operating under a broken set of assumptions about how much women should be paid, how important the work that they do is. And, that is, and I think that it's like really hard, but what's the alternative? Is the alternative just to accept the way things are? No, like we can't do that. So then engage in the world differently, understand that childcare is an economic issue. That's something Hillary Clinton presented as an economic issue in 2016, and women have to go and fight for it. It like the pandemic revealed all of these, brought these problems into an even more stark relief. And that's crushing. And I have some own friends who are like, I'm not sure I'm going to go back to work. It's just too hard. And then there's women like me, who I'm in a position I can do something about it. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to go and fight even harder for these kinds of changes. But it's like, we're getting to the real root of the problem now, right? When you get to the underlying questions about not valuing women the same that we do as men. We just don't do it. And that's why the book is a declaration of independence from a man's world, because I want us to say this stuff out loud, to say, like, it's not like we're not working hard enough, or that we're not skilled enough, or that we have to prove ourselves, right? We're just bumping up against obstacles that were there before we were ever put on this earth, and you got to like get your way around them. That, Emily, is what you did with creating the 19th, right? Like that is what you did. You stepped outside, and you did it with women founders and women and founders of color, women of color, right? You got to get that into the ground floor. Trying to make your way in an institution that was, created by men a long time ago is still it's still very hard for women.
It is. And you said bringing this into full relief. I mean, I was doing virtual school with a 4-year-old virtual pre-K from 5:30 to 7 a.m. this morning before I took her to daycare so I could actually work. It's just all of this.
I know. I saw your tweet about that yesterday, and it was just like, that is nuts. And you can't, this is unsustainable. It's bonkers.
It is,
and totally. There's like, and I know women, it's like, it's so hard. It's like, all right, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do about that? Are we going to, say, well, I guess that's the way things are? And it's like a lot of even more work for us piled on it to fight back. But like, we got to fight back. You can't just accept
totally.
this.
Well, I want to ask you, I mean, you talk about 2016 representing an awakening for millions of women, yourself included, and that yours was really sort of driven by this experience of watching Hillary Clinton being reduced to a caricature by her opponents and by the press. And you wrote in your book, if that kind of gross public distortion of character could happen to her, it could happen to any woman. I want to ask you, 4 years later, looking at the 2020 stage, more women in that field than ever before, was 2020 any better than 2016 from the standpoint of the rhetoric and the coverage, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it was, only in that we called it out this time, right? The day that Elizabeth Warren got into the race, I remember Politico wrote a story saying, what is she going to do about the Hillary problem? What is she going to do about the likability factor? And the difference was this time everybody went crazy on Politico. Right. And they got a lot of pushback about it. And the candidates were still asked, they were asked the electability question, right? That was like the 2020 version of what Hillary faced, which was, we don't trust you. In 2020, it was the version of that question. It was like, well, a woman lost last time, sort of, right. In the Electoral College anyway. But so how can you prove that you're electable? And it's like a different version of the same question. But there's something that we built on from the year before. Hillary proved a woman can be elected president. She got 3 million more votes than Trump. Like, it can happen. The coverage still had a lot of gender bias in it, but we were calling it out this time. And it's not the most satisfying progress, but I still believe that is progress. And I think, writing about it has an impact. That makes a difference. Calling it out makes a difference. And, you saw the group of women that band together to warn the press ahead of Kamala Harris being named as the running mate. Like, we're going to be looking for gendered coverage. We're going to be looking for racist coverage, and we're going to call it out. That's different. That's progress from 16. I wish they didn't have to do that, but at least we are fighting back. I feel like it's better.
Yeah, that did seem like really an enormous effort, and amazing to have women basically saying like, we're going to be watching you and we're going to be watching the language you use. Because I think while in 2016, the conversation was around electability, which to me is this ridiculous concept, like we know women can win. If you win, you're electable. To me, the conversation this time was around ambition, which is something you also talk about at great length in your
Yep.
book. Was Kamala Harris or Stacey Abrams too ambitious in their designs on what they were trying to accomplish? I mean, I think to me this time around, that was the buzzword, ambition being a dirty word. I mean, talk a little bit about your sort of personal journey with women and ambition.
Yeah, in my own life, it was something that I didn't want to admit to, right? Because I think I had the sense that it was sort of an unappealing quality in women to be ambitious. It meant you were calculating. And like when you get to the root of all of these sort of words about like she's calculating or she's always hiding something or she's sketchy or she's not what she appears to be, which is like a lot of the criticisms around women candidates. I think that if you try to get at the root of what that is, I think it's just that even in modern America, that's still a woman seeking power like that is not something we quite recognize. There's something confounding, vexing about it. There's something about her I just don't like, right? You hear that a lot about women. I heard that a lot about Hillary. We even had an acronym, TSAHIJDL. There's something about her I just don't like. And ambition is a big part of that because it's a quality that has not historically been present in women or accepted in women. I really credit Kirsten Gillibrand for being sort of running like a nakedly ambitious campaign to be president of the United States. She's like, I'm running as a woman candidate. I think more women in power is a good thing. Like, is that such a radical idea? And with Kamala Harris, when she was being considered to be the running mate, some of Biden's advisors said, well, we're not sure that we can trust her because she's so ambitious that she wants to be, can she really be a good vice president if she wants to be president? It's like, well, Joe Biden ran against Barack Obama in 2008. Joe Biden said that Barack Obama was not qualified to be president in 2008, and Barack Obama still picked him to be to be his vice president. And Joe Biden managed to put all his frightful ambition aside, right? And serve Barack Obama well as a trusted partner. Kamala Harris can do the same thing, right? So I feel like it was troubling that Harris had to go through that, but in the end, she got the job, right? She got the job. And I did see, like people would say this about Gillibrand, about she always seems to be calculating for the next her next move. And it's like, well, how about Pete Buttigieg? He's not even 40 years old and he's already been mayor of a city for 8 years and ran for statewide elected office and ran to be DNC chair. Is Pete Buttigieg also like calculating his next move? Yeah, he probably is. That's like a good way to run your career, but we don't look at it that way with them, right? And I feel like now I feel like I have an obligation to say I'm really ambitious. I wanted to write this book. I wanted a lot of women to read it. I want it to change their lives. I wanted to change how they look at themselves. I wanted to be successful. And I have ambitions to go on and do even more. I think during 2016, we got this crazy advice from pollsters about how to work around Hillary's ambition. And obviously it doesn't fool anybody, right? I think we just got to like plow through this stuff now.
Totally. You said not even pollsters. I mean, I think there's an amazing section in your book where you talk about like the psychologists that you had to bring in to help sort of analyze, how different people of different gender identities were thinking about Hillary Clinton. It's just, I can't imagine ever doing that for a man. And it was just fascinating.
No.
So
it's crazy. It's crazy.
So there are so many. I want to talk about sort of earlier in your career, because like hindsight is 2020, and I was surprised to hear that these were your words, by the way, not mine, because I think you're great on TV. But you said that earlier in your career you were surprisingly bad at cable news interviews, and that you were finally able, after all these years, to trace that back to gender too, which was such a light bulb for me as someone who hates to be on TV. Talk a little bit about what you finally determined about that.
Women are pleasers. I was a pleaser. I always want people to be heard and feel like I'm meeting them where they are and I am not a threatening presence, right? So if you do cable television, the first question is always designed to throw you off. It's antagonistic in some way, right? Particularly if you're like representing the president or a presidential candidate. That's just how they build up to be. And what I found that I would do is I would buy in to the premise of the question, which is something as a communications professional, I will tell you, you are never supposed to do. And then I would want the person to, because I want the interviewer to feel heard, or that I'm not some crazy woman, that I was not too strident. And so I would buy into something that they would say. And then that would get me all tripped up and I would start to hem and haw. And it made me very ineffective at television. People told me I could no longer do it. As the White House communications director, they told me I could not. I was banned from cable television. And what it sort of crystallized and forced me to focus on, and Emily, I found a lot of women have this experience, the same phenomenon. It's that you feel like you've always had two conversations going on in your head at the same time, right? One is, I think this. And then before you speak, you check that against what you will say if you were challenged. And there's a lot of research that shows women are challenged, by a much bigger margin than men are. And if what I'm saying is challenged, how will I defend it? And then I only actually speak until after I've figured out how I'm going to defend what I want to say. And if I can't defend it, I don't say it. And I think that's why women can hem and haw before, when we're doing public speaking or when we're in, a work setting and we're asked a direct question, because we're going through that process. And it means it's bonkers because it means you're censoring yourself. I mean, I realized, wow, I don't say what I think a fair amount of time because I'm going through this process. And, I don't think anybody looks at the world and is like, wow, we have it all figured out. Nobody thinks that, right? So women speaking more forthrightly, offering a different perspective, one that hasn't been heard already, I think is a really important thing to do.
Amazing. I'm taking all of that to heart and thinking about it more in my interviews now. It was really illuminating for me. So a section of the book that honestly really surprised me was there's a chapter where you talk about Monica Lewinsky. I'd never personally heard you talk about this, or certainly not write about it, and how you sort of took personal responsibility over the course of your career for recommending her, for bringing her into the West Wing. A line in your book, you wrote, "One day Monica was in my life as a former intern, and the next she got caught up as a pawn in an epic battle between men over power." It pretty much wrecked her life in the process, is the way you end that line. How do you reflect on that time all these years later? Because, that narrative has been rewritten in my own head from my childhood, honestly, where she was treated like the butt of every joke, to today, where it is so abundantly clear that she was victimized. How has your career been tempered by or changed by what you experienced with Monica?
It's a weird thing. I mean, Emily, I've had, I've just bumped up to this so much in my career. Monica was my intern. I worked for John Edwards, and helped him, and Elizabeth, who was really his wife, Elizabeth was really close to, when it was revealed that, he had an affair and a child was involved. Even Tara Reid, the woman that accused Joe Biden of assaulting her, I had worked with her, when she was an intern in a congressional office. And I don't think that this is something I've brought on. I think that this is the time for the reckoning, right? This is when all of these, and politics is kind of the way it comes to the fore, that this sort of primal battle is playing out. When, the way I personally felt during impeachment, and, the fact that Monica had been my intern, it's and I think on a smaller scale, women experience it in the workplace. It's something bad happened on my watch. It must be my fault. Right. And we take ownership of problems that are not ours. I think that it's because, again, when you try to get to the root of it, I think it's because we feel like we are visitors in a man's world, right? What you're really revealing is, I'm not sure I actually belong here, and I'm going to be the first kicked out the door if there's a problem. And men don't seem to internalize that. kind of view, right? So it's like, I wanted women to say, like, here on an epic scale, this obviously was not my fault. And yet still I harbored this, sense of shame and dread about it. And then when I look at what happened to Monica, and how, as you said, she was the butt of she was just fair game just across the board. And that did horrify me in real time. I mean, there was someone I knew who all of a sudden just exploded into this phenomenon. Watching her mom come out of the FBI interview, her mom was like doubled over, like physical pain, like physically broken from this experience. And so I did see, like, she was just a pawn. And that was like a huge fight about men in power, and nobody cared who got caught up in it. And at the time, it's like the woman was just collateral. What does she say about him, right? That's like how this was all Anita Hill, Monica Lewinsky, other, battles from the 90s. It's like, how does this reflect on the man and his character or his ability to lead? And how can we use that as a weapon in politics? And then what changed 20 years later is, what's the impact on her, right? That's what's different now, is the focus on the woman as the person that was harmed here, not just like everything swirling around what it says about a man.
Yep, absolutely.
And that's like what this time is about, like that's what this reckoning is about.
Absolutely. You write that for most of your life, you wouldn't admit to having ambition. We talked about it a couple of minutes ago, because people were obviously put off by ambitious women. As we said, we saw that sort of same thread playing out in the Veep stakes this year. Talk to me about where your mind is. At what point in your career or your personal reckoning did ambition become not a dirty word for you? I mean, how? You said you took. Yeah. It was a long journey for you, because you really were concerned about seeming like you were overly promoting ambitious women. You said you sort of picked your battles over the course of your career.
Yeah.
When did that change?
Yeah, it's, because I think that, again, like, there's just so much that we internalized in the workplace. And when I first started working, I thought that the women's rights movement was a fight from the past, and that battle was over, and I sort of expected I'd have to work harder than the men, but eventually we would all catch up and to achieve the same kind of success that they had. And then, around 2014, 15, 16, when I'm working in the Obama White House, and I had a lot of great male colleagues. I always had great male colleagues. No one ever in my entire career, do I feel like any man ever tried to hold me back, and still they rose faster than me, right? I became White House communications director. I was 10 years older than the guy that had it before. He does not think he's 10 years more talented than me. He doesn't. But he just got recognized before, right? And so I started to have these kinds of realizations that I had wrongly assumed that women were on the right track. And you sort of realize this with a panic, because I was like, oh my God, I have not been doing my part, because I've been settling for less. I have not said that I am ambitious. I've withheld my own ambition from myself, because I don't want to be disappointed. Because if you admit to yourself that you really want something, but you think you can't get it, right? You sort of like self-protect and don't even admit to yourself that you want this. And so these things were all building in me, but I think they're not to be trite, but the realization was the 16 defeat. Because then you're like, well, we played by the rules. We did everything you're supposed to do, and we lost. So all of this, I'm no longer buying into any of it, and I was like, I'm going to write a book. And I was told by literary agents that nobody would be interested in what I had to say. They don't want to hear from losers unless you want to write like a gossipy book about like that takes down Hillary. No one's going to buy your book. And then I found somebody who had a different view, and I was like, I'm not going to write anything mean about anybody in my book. And I didn't. And it became a #1 New York Times bestseller, right? So then I'm just like, like, these people do not know me, and they don't know what I'm capable of. And only you know that. And like, when you hold back your ambition, you are sidelining yourself. And you owe it to women to proclaim it so that it is more comfortable for others to do the same. What we say out loud makes a big difference.
Well, I also love your conversations around age, and how there are people in Washington who basically said, well, if you're a woman over 50, like you're basically dead in the water. And I have to tell you, even in launching the 19th, I've had male donors say to me, well, you're about to be 40. This is the window, between 40 and 50, this is what you've got left. So like make it count right now. And it is. So I loved your take on that because it also was really friggin' empowering when I think about my career. So that's amazing too. So, all right. Well, I have to ask you, given your ambition, what's next for you? Will you consider going back into politics in a big way if there's a Biden administration, if you were asked?
Um, I mean, I guess if like there's something like big to do that you were asked to do, sure. I cannot imagine what that would be. So it's an amazing experience. I spent 12 years in the West Wing. It's hard to make a difference though. I feel like I love writing. And I do think that matters. I think the written word matters. I think when women see their own experiences reflected back on the page, that has a huge difference. I think that's the most important work I've done. So I really am loath to leave that behind. And I think that matters. So I don't know. I would love to write more. I'd love to write, like I have ideas about like a 2-person play about a political campaign. And, I want to write the end all be all, like Patti Smith version of a presidential campaign. I want to write a book like that. That's like what's in my head now.
Amazing.
Patti Smith wrote a book about politics. That would be amazing.
I know. I was going to say that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Given what you obviously know about the gender dynamics at play in our nation's elections, what should we expect from out of the next 8 weeks? What are you expecting us to see in this election cycle from the media, from how the campaigns are framed? Give us your soothsaying.
They, Trump was trying to scare people. That doesn't seem to be panning out. So they could go back to Kamala Harris. They could go back to, they keep trying to find a way to have some attacks stick to Biden and are not working. And so, Harris, I know that in recent days, Trump has gone after her. That could happen again. The thing, it's like we're after Labor Day now, and it's like the roller coaster where you like clink, 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 like up to the top of the roller coaster and get ready to go. Because as crazy as it been from Labor Day on is the nuttiest. So I think there's like more attacks like that on Biden. I worry a lot about what's happening with the electoral process as well, trying to delegitimize vote by mail, those kinds of efforts. I think that you'll see Trump trying to lay down a storyline to tell people. So after the fact, if he doesn't win, he can go back and say that this was that there was fraud. And what's really concerning about that is, you give somebody like him the keys to the democracy, and he's able to use these tools like the Postal Service to his advantage. And it's what it looks like for democracies to crumble. From my perspective, on the upside, I think that the debates will really matter. People say debates don't matter anymore. They are wrong. They really help the Democratic nominee because it's so hard to get attention because Trump sucks it all up. And when you're on the stage with Trump, you're more equally balanced in terms of coverage. You can call Trump out in real time on things that he says that aren't true. I think it's the most powerful tool the Democrat has. That's coming forward. I know that people have more to learn about Joe Biden too, and I know that that's what the campaign wants to do in terms of their ads, to be positive about him. So I bet we have record huge turnout. That's great, but it will be super close.
Well, we just have a minute left here. If you were speaking to your younger self or the young women who are coming up in politics in this moment, what is your one best piece of advice?
Support women, and that means yourself too, right? I've always tried to be supportive of women, but I thought that I was still in competition with them for a limited amount of success, right? One of the things you buy into, and women are not our competition. Women are my support system. I mean, Emily, I think that's what you've experienced with the 19th, right? That's what I've experienced and everything I've done in 2016. Women have had my back in a way they never have before. When women succeed, it opens the door for more women to succeed. And just if I had bought in on that at an earlier time, and if women had like believed in them, for young women to believe in themselves now and their ability to make that difference and to band together to do that, it's world changing, really is.
Amazing. You are legendary. It is such a joy to get to spend time with you. Only sad that we have to do it virtually. Thank you again to Jennifer Palmieri for participating in the Texas Tribune Festival. And thanks to all of you for having us back.